I wrote a comment on the Skeptical OB's post this week, and it was what prompted it was Bauhauswife was going to start some kind of online thingy, tutoring, how to start your own birth worker business, which I thought was just terrifying. So, so I was like running down a list of things I remember hearing from people. One of them was, is this what you really want? Is this what you truly want? Don't you remember your birth plan? And pulling the cesarean card. You don't want to go to a hospital, cesarean. Also, CPS card, less often used, but I've definitely heard that one. The other one, what were the other ones? Oh, yes, some things are normal. It's normal for some women too. It's normal for some babies too. That kind of stretching of when you should be worried, when you should not be worried. As for the midwives not showing up, yeah, that's factored in at least 2 home birth deaths. And one of them was a midwife who had been late to their previous birth. They used her again, and they called her and she said, well, I'm on my way. And then they waited and they called again. And they're like, where are you? And she's like, I'm on my way again. At that point, they did the wise course of action, which is to say, if your midwife isn't going to show up, you go to the hospital, but it was too late. But yeah, that's the one thing that kind of weirds me out about you guys talking about midwives and how they make you comfortable about laboring at home without any kind of monitoring or support whatsoever, is the fact that I know for a fact that this has led to the deaths of babies. Because if your my rule of thumb is, if your midwife says she's coming and doesn't show shortly, like within a half an hour, just book it to the hospital, because otherwise you're on your own.
It's funny that you mentioned the CPS thing, because that was a prevailing theme in my doulas classes. And as somebody who I'm pretty good at like stepping back and looking at things, looking at the big picture. And I knew there was part of this story that she wasn't telling us the truth about, but she did tell us stories of CPS being threatened by the hospital that I wound up going to because of births. She didn't say they were with my midwife, but after my son died, I was able to use different pieces of different stories that I heard from other people to piece together the full story. And she actually used the story that wound up getting my midwife kicked out of the hospital as a reason why you should choose my midwife and a reason why you should choose home birth. And CPS was part of it. CPS was threatened on a family for something. I don't know what the full outcome is. I know the details, but I don't know them enough to be able to say 100% what happened. But it was a situation where that baby, I don't know how they turned out, and I'm scared of what the outcome could have been. And after my son died, realizing how boldly my doula told that story as a support of out-of-hospital birth was shocking. But she talked about CPS all the time. And I want to clarify to anybody who does watch this video, CPS is probably not going to be called on you unless you get to the hospital and refuse the treatment that the doctors think your child needs. The only time I've ever heard of CPS even being close to threatened on a family was when the midwife was saying, screw these doctors, get your baby out of here.
That's what they do, actually. That's exactly what they do. And actually, I've just heard of one. Me and Marissa were looking at somebody that just happened right here in Vegas within the past, month or two. And like there's a bunch of people that like, yeah, you go to the hospital, they go to give you medical care. They say, hey, your baby needs NICU. Maybe they put baby in NICU for so many hours or a week or something. And your midwife tells you your baby doesn't need NICU and you can check your baby out of NICU. No, that's not how that works. If your baby went to NICU, even for an hour, even for a day, even for however long, you don't go check your baby out of NICU. And I don't give a crap of who tells you that. The doctors and the nurses will tell you when your baby is ready to go. Don't listen to a midwife. Don't listen to a doula, because you could be jeopardizing the health and well-being and the life of your child if you listen to these non-medical people. And I can tell you, I've seen it online and I've seen it right here in town, that these midwives have told people to literally go check their babies out of NICU because it's unnecessary and the baby's fine because the baby's stable now. So therefore the baby doesn't need to be there anymore. I'm pretty sure that's not why they're still keeping your kid. They're not keeping your child from you. Please understand that. The nurses and doctors are not keeping your child in NICU to keep them away from you. They're keeping your child to save them, to do what is necessary to save them. Because you could take baby home and baby could have been stable and then baby crashes. And then you go back in and it's way worse than what it was before. You need to trust the people that know what they're doing, that are in NICU. We need to trust them and not trust these people that have no NICU experience. They have no medical training that are telling people to check them out. Yes. What happens if you do that? If you have your baby in NICU and you try to check them out against doctor's orders and you're basically trying to like kidnap your kid from the hospital, because we know if you go to have a baby nowadays, your baby gets a bracelet put on, you get a bracelet put on, and nobody can walk out those doors and then until they take that bracelet off. That is the way it is because babies get stolen. Just in case anybody wants to know, that's not against you. That's not against your family. It's because people will steal your baby. Okay. People are weird. But when it comes to NICU and your kid is in NICU, do not listen to a midwife or a doula that says, go check your kid out. Do you know what happens? The cops get called because they're trying to save your child's life and they're trying to tell you it's not about you, it's about your baby. And so the cops have to come and it becomes a big mess where they have to try to tell you like your baby needs to be here. I don't know who told you that, but your baby needs to be here. And it becomes involved in all these other things. It's not because you're a bad parent. It's because you're listening to bad information that is leading to a very dangerous thing that can happen. The life of your child is in the balance of what's going on there in NICU. Please leave your NICU baby there. Please, 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 please. I cannot stress that enough because I've seen it. And yes, there has been nurses that have told people, these nurse midwives that have been kicked out of hospitals here in Vegas because of telling people to check their babies out of NICU. The hospital was like, no. You are not a pediatrician. You are not the doctor and you are not part of NICU. You do not get to tell families to check their babies out of NICU because you think it's okay. That is not how this works. It's not how the system works. Please get on board with what's going on. They're not trying to punish you. But what happens is when CPS gets involved, now they're involved because they need to make sure that you're actually being safe to your child, that you're going to protect your child, that you actually care about their life and well-being. Unfortunately, that's why they get involved. And there's nothing wrong with CPS. In case anybody wants to know, like, I am involved with a lot of stuff in the community, and CPS wants you to be reunited and happy family. They want your child to be healthy. They want your child to be well. They want your child to get the medical treatment that they want. They want your baby to be fed. They want you to be fed. They want you safe. CPS is not to punish you. It's not to throw you in jail, and it's not to take your child away. It's to make sure that families are safe, that you have the information that you need to provide safe care to your babies and your children. That is what it is. That's why we have it. That's why it's used. Don't twist the system to fit a narrative for the natural people that make money off from you, not going to get medical help to save your life and your children's life. I'm sorry, but I can't get this out of my mind, but this is truly happening right now in America, where these midwives and doulas are telling women to check their babies out of NICU. No, don't ever do that. If they're in NICU, they're there for a reason. And trust me, they can check you out whenever the pediatrician, everybody says it's good. Please call your pediatrician. Please talk to your doctor. Do not listen to a freaking midwife. And I don't care if she's a nurse midwife either. If you have a nurse midwife that is telling you to check your baby at a NICU, you need to report her to your state because she does not care about you and she wants CPS and cops to be called on you. That is the truth. If she's that uninformed and uneducated, turn her into the state. File a complaint against her because she's doing things that are not at the best interest for your family and your child. Period. I don't care what anybody else says about this, but I'm sorry. Once you lose a child and you see other people playing gambling games with your child's life, those people need to be out of here. This is why you don't work in hospitals. This is why we are removing you from hospitals. This is why nurse midwives lose their licenses, get kicked out of hospitals. You are not listening to the well-being for families and babies. Get on board. These people are not getting education and training for years of their life and spending their lives as a career for a nurse or a doctor to say, hey, that's cool. Check the baby out. We don't care if that kid lives or dies. They literally put their sweat, blood, and tears for our lives and for our babies. And you're like, just take your baby home. Who cares? Don't get it checked out. That's not how this is. We don't have medical care to make you the jerk parent. We don't have medical care because these are bad people of medical care. We have it to do things that we've never been able to do in the history of mankind to save lives. That's what it is, period.
Okay.
That's
Sorry.
I would like to say something from the medical point of view is when I worked at the Children's Hospital, here was their goal. Your baby went to NICU. And when they discharged your baby from NICU, they did not want your baby to come back. It was a one-way trip. They wanted your baby to go home healthy. They wanted the parents to be well educated on how to care for their child's particular needs. They wanted, the pediatrician follow-up appointments made because anyone with special needs might be seeing their doctor as often as once a week or maybe twice a week if they have a really fragile child. But the thing is, for infection control reasons, it's a one-way trip. Baby comes into NICU, baby goes home, and fingers crossed, baby doesn't come back to the hospital, need to be admitted to the NICU again. So there is a very set, methodical process whereby they check your baby out, make sure they're meeting milestones, make sure they're capable of doing everything they need to do on their own or with their parents' help when they go home. And when all of these things are checked off, and everybody's on board and the parents have complied with the education, which is absolutely positively standard. Show up, do your bit, and do not argue about it, please. Then everybody goes home and hopefully happy endings, no more NICU for your baby. So it is so hard, especially now during COVID. It is so hard for families to have a child in NICU. It's never easy. But follow the rules, do everything, and oh my gosh, please do not do the kind of things that end up with an open CPS investigation on you. It's just not worth it, even if you miss your baby very much.
Both of the things that both of you said are amazing because I was hoping we would talk about this exact thing today. So yay, I'm so happy about this. So something that I want to talk about, I have a couple cousins who work for insurance companies. So in the United States, where we have private insurance that is paying for the bulk of our medical care that we receive in hospitals, your hospital has to justify every piece of treatment that you get to your medical insurance company. Otherwise, it will not be covered. A hospital is not going to take a risk of you not being able to pay exorbitant NICU bills and your insurance company being unwilling to pay them because they weren't necessary. There is no child being put in a NICU that does not belong there. It goes against everything. As much as we all like to complain about the way the United States medical system works, putting a baby in the NICU without a justifiable and necessary reason to do so goes against everything about our medical system and how it's structured. So if a doctor is saying your baby needs to be in the NICU, your baby needs to be there probably even more than the doctor wants to have to address. With that bearing that in mind, you have to understand that once your child is in the NICU, like Ange just said, the goal is to get your baby out. That is why you see your friends who are posting on Facebook and posting on social media about their NICU babies, about, well, baby can't leave the NICU because he failed the car seat test. Baby can't leave the NICU because of this, baby. They start trying as soon as that baby is stable. They start trying to figure out if they can get the baby out of the NICU. They will try things over and over and over again for days and days and days to make sure your baby is safe to leave the NICU. They are not going to start trying on day 2 or 3 to see if your baby can pass the car seat test if they're hoping you're going to be there for another 2 weeks. If they're hoping you're going to be there for another 2 weeks, they're not even going to try the things that are required to get your child out of the NICU. And babies born in the hospital, babies born out of the hospital, transferred post-birth, and babies who their parent was transferred mid-labor into the hospital. If they wind up in the NICU, your baby is not looked at differently by doctors and nurses because you chose to birth outside of a hospital. Your baby is looked at as a baby who needs medical attention. They don't care where that baby came out. The only reason they care how the baby came out is because how the baby came out is important to the care that the baby will receive. So if you are confronted with a situation where your baby might need the NICU, you need to accept the fact that that is where you all belong, and that no doctor is going to give false recommendations, forced treatments for things. Doctors don't really make all that much more money if they're doing these things. These things are expensive. It is expensive to keep a baby in the NICU. They don't want to do that, especially not to give petty consequences to parents who made choices that these doctors in their own personal lives don't support. Your doctor is not petty. Your nurses are not petty. They are heroes. They are life savers. They are doing everything that they can to allow you to bring home not just a baby, because that's all the midwives care about is you bringing home a baby. Sometimes they don't even care about that. The doctors want you to bring home a baby that will be talking at 2 years old. The doctors want you to bring home a baby that's not going to be suffering from spectrum disorders and processing disorders and disabilities. And unfortunately, midwives are not trained in pediatrics. They don't work along with pediatricians in their birth settings. They are never educated on what the long-term implications of what they do to people are. So yes, there are midwives out there who are entirely aware of this, but most of them are just ignorant. And it's not part of their training, which is fine. Not even in the medical field. Doctors are trained in what they're trained in. Orthopedic surgeons are trained in orthopedic surgery. Oncologists are trained in oncology. We see this all the time where doctors only see within their scope of practice. But that's why they work with a facility that offers you a broad spectrum of care.